The Detroit Red Wings are playing off against the Tampa Bay Lightning in an hour and a half at the time of this video's upload, so maybe it's not the right time to make a Red Wings related video. But I wanted to respond to some of the discourse that I had seen on the Detroit Red Wings subreddit in regards to a name that a lot of Wings fans have been pretty excited for the past little while. Today, we're heading over to Vityaz Moscow region's KHL team and talking about a guy who was taken over in terms of their on-ice play. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about Red Wings prospect Dmitri Buchelnikov and asking the question, what are your expectations for him? Now, as I had said, a lot of this comes from the Detroit Red Wings subreddit. You can go out there and check it out yourself. We'll leave a link in the description of this post that we'll be reading and some of the comments within. Also linked in the description is our ExpressVPN affiliate link. If you need some free months on your VPN and you want to save some money, go out there and check out our page. You'll also be helping out the channel in the process. But let's give the tail of the tape here on Dmitri Buchelnikov. He's a 21-year-old forward, 5'10", 170 pounds, right-handed guy drafted by the Wings in the second round of the 2022 NHL Entry Draft. Now, the thing is, you'll look at the birth date, September 6, 2003. This means that he actually was eligible for the 2021 NHL Entry Draft, but he was not taken. In the 2021 season, he had 21 points in 29 SKA 1946 St. Petersburg games and 16 points in 70 SKA Varyagi St. Petersburg games. Both teams in the Russian MHL Junior League. He wasn't like super highly productive. Obviously, it was a point per game hovering around that territory, but it wasn't good enough to get him drafted in his 17-year-old season, despite the fact that Future Considerations actually had him in the 125th overall spot in that year. The season after, though, Buchelnikov exploded for junior production points, getting 75 points in 56 games played. This is why the Red Wings drafted him in the second round, despite the fact that he was an overage player. Give it a few years and some extra time developing in the VHL, eventually into the KHL, and you saw Dmitri Buchelnikov have himself his first full KHL season last year. He played for Admiral Vladivostok, having 29 points in 55 games played, on loan from SKA St. Petersburg's organization. He then got sent over to Vityaz Moscow region, where this year Buchelnikov has 40 points in 45 games played. He is on pace for 58 points in 65, and if you look at some of the KHL point production, he is one of the top guys in the league. He is top 15 in overall points in this hockey league. If you wanted to narrow it down, let's go over to U21 players. Oh, actually, it should be U22 players, excuse me. Dmitri Buchelnikov is one of the top guys. Actually, he is the top guy in the league in U22 points. I mean, all these names are pretty good players. Ivan Demidov, Nikita Artemonov, Prokhor Polpatov, and a whole bunch of other dudes over here too. But Dmitri Buchelnikov is the best of the best. And if you dive into his recent point game log, you'll see a lot of production coming in spurts throughout the year. Going back over onto Dmitri Buchelnikov and his game here, I wanted to head over to a subreddit post on the R Red Wing sub, asking what are your realistic expectations for Buchelnikov? What's the ceiling and what's the floor for him? I try to keep my hopes low, but this kid looks like a beast, almost Panarin Kaprizov-esque. Let's dive into some of these replies. It's impossible to know. This year, he is scoring at a similar point pace to Kaprizov at the same age. The sky really could be the limit, but the problem is getting him here. The Wings, without a star Russian, has felt wrong since Datsuk retired. Pretty sure it's above what Kaprizov did at that age, unless I'm thinking of points and not in goals. I would say that Dmitri Buchelnikov's floor is Polkanen or Martin Ferk, and his ceiling is a good second-line winger. That's kind of a low ceiling considering some of his KHL comparables. I'd love if he came over and he was a solid second-line winger, but I think there is potential for more. His ceiling is higher than that. He's a very good skater with elite skill and playmaking IQ. The sky really is the limit for these types of players. Another reply says, I think his ceiling is Artemi Panarin, top-line winger and a point-per-game player or better. The floor is low. He could end up not being able to hang at the NHL level. I also think there's not really much middle ground for Buchelnikov. He's either going to come over and cement himself as a top 6 point producer, or he'll wash out. He is a textbook boom or bust prospect. And I actually do agree more so with this assessment than any of the other ones. I don't really think that for a lot of these Russian guys who are super good at producing points, I don't really think there's much room for them to be middle 6 guys in the National Hockey League. It's either they come over and they convert, they really allow their offensive sides to flourish in North America, or they have a much more difficult time doing that, and they really only max out as a AHL guy who's really only ever a call-up option and who isn't really able to transition all too well, either due to defensive limitations or a lack of transitioning in their skills from Russia over to North America. There are some guys who have found themselves a reasonable NHL role after being stars in the KHL, but it's sort of rare. You see more guys who either pan out or who don't. Fleur is probably a fringe NHL guy, good AHL player. His ceiling is probably a second-line winger on a good team. Right-handed Kucherov, I think the ceiling could be as high as Kucherov or Datsuk, maybe more like Kaprizov, and the floor is hard to say, but hopefully not Zadina. This is where we dive into some of the numbers. Okay, Monsieur AK has a really interesting comment. I really don't understand people saying that his ceiling is a second or a third liner. I don't know what they could be basing his ceiling on. I can almost guarantee they aren't watching full games of his on a regular basis. Sure, he is not a top 10 pick, he's not a big player, but the production comparisons at his age in the KHL became first-line players in the NHL. Tarasenko, Kuznetsov, Kaprizov, some of them also play the more talented teams. SKA and CSKA compared to Vityaz, who is a cellar dweller this season. It's one thing to be cautious, because most prospects don't pan out or hit their ceilings, but don't limit what you deem to be the ceiling due to being overly conservative. Just acknowledge the low probability. Seen similar with Raymond, where almost no one before this season wanted to say it's possible he could be a 100-point player, even after his second half last season. Saying it could potentially happen is different from saying it definitely will happen. So to answer the original question, his ceiling in my opinion is a top-line winger and a power play 1 threat. He looks smaller than Kaprizov and Panarin to the eye, even if the height and weight stats are similar. But he's only 21. He's a pass and shot threat and could be another half-wall facilitator. His floor is a quadruple AA player who has all the offensive tools but doesn't commit to D or can't handle the NHL physicality, which happens with skilled smaller forwards a lot of times. Maybe a Daniel Sprong. And to end off this video, let's go out there and use the Elite Prospects player comparison tool. We'll search up Dmitri Buchelnikov, and we'll throw out some comparisons there that I do think are interesting. I'm thinking of 2 names. I'm thinking of Artemi Panarin, and then I'm also thinking about the Kirill Kaprizov number as well. So let's do Buchelnikov Panarin first and see the comparison over here. You can see heading into the game logs, yeah, okay, that's not really relevant in our conversation. Right now, Dmitri Buchelnikov is in his 21-year-old year. He is projected for 58 points in 65 games. When Artemi Panarin was 21, he had 18 points in 40 games. A lot fewer points. In the year prior, at age 20, Panarin actually outproduced Buchelnikov. He had 31 points in 50 games played. Buchelnikov had 29 points in 55 games, so Panarin was slightly better than Buchelnikov at age 20. At age 19, Panarin was in the KHL. He had 21 points in 40 games played. Buchelnikov didn't really do much in the KHL. He was more in the VHL and the MHL. So you can see that Panarin had a really interesting development path in the KHL. His 20-year-old year was a lot better than his 21-year-old year, but Buchelnikov right now has actually outproduced Panarin's 22-year-old year, which is definitely interesting to dive into. Let's go out there and search Kirill Kaprizov, because that also is going to be one of the main comparisons that people like to bring up. When Kirill Kaprizov was in his 21-year-old year, you can see he had 51 points in 57 games played, so he was more productive than Buchelnikov. In fact, Kaprizov's 20-year-old year was already at a point-per-game level in the KHL, so was his 19-year-old year. So Kaprizov actually, I think, is a little bit too high of a comparison to bring up for Buchelnikov, although if you wanted to talk about just goals, I mean, Similar goal numbers here, I guess, at 20, but still, I think Panarin is a much better comparison for Buchelnikov in terms of overall point production. At the end of the day, though, this is a very good prospect, and a lot of Wings fans should be excited to see him suit up in the next few years. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do the Wings have the next Artemi Panarin, and do you think he's going to be that great in the NHL? What do you think his ceiling is, and how well do you think he'll pan out? Let me know in the comments what you think. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.